and then eventually helping founders build these products. I tend to also kind of call myself a company builder, mostly because venture capital is it's a means. The process of that is what fascinated me the most, as to how you can go from nothing to something that could be extraordinary.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Pitch Cafe podcast. This is a place where talent meets coffee. Our very first show was all about roasting, toasting, and boosting youth entrepreneurs. Today we have someone who does it for a profession, but he calls it as something to learn from the founders. We are talking about an investor, a venture capitalist from Silicon Valley who is a part of J Ventures Fund. The thing which struck me about his profile was everything he talks about in the startup and venture landscape is totally refreshing. This is a fresh mind which is envisioning the future of venture and startup landscape. If you talk to him, he's very humble. He's going to say no, but still, he has a lot of insight to offer to the startup founders and also the venture capitalists here or maybe outside Silicon Valley. So let's bring on our very special guest for today, Nilesh Trivedi from J Ventures Fund. He is a part of many more ventures, but to get started, let's hear it from the horse's mouth. Welcome, Nilesh. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Great to have me, Vida. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time and having this chat with me.
Fantastic. So, Nilesh, let's get started with the first question here. You've changed careers. You've been an engineer, and then you've moved on to be a startup founder, and now you're in the investment landscape. What is it like to move across so many verticals? And who is this person, Nilesh Trivedi, behind the persona? Who is this person?
Yeah, I still consider myself as sort of an engineer. Engineer turned VC. Technically, I like to focus on the fact that I tend to see myself more as a company builder, which was the sole reason why I wanted to do venture capital, because I needed some vehicle to go and help build more companies. Um, you know, as a founder, you're building one or two, maybe three. But as a VC, you have the opportunity to actually help founders, many founders build many great companies, which is the path that I chose. If I was not a founder or an operator, maybe uh, invest in many companies that can actually end up becoming great companies. So as an engineer, I was either building products, marketing products, uh, technically selling products to the people who go out and sell these products. I've had the fortunate time at various companies where I was involved in building several companies from scratch, several businesses from scratch, several businesses at different companies, going from zero to billion-dollar growth rates, revenue run rates, etc. And that experience is what I was kind of always thinking about. When I was doing that in the corporate world, let's say at Cisco, at other companies. I was always kind of in the mind that if I can take that experience and help transition that into the startup land, where eventually you have the opportunity to kind of go from zero to basically whatever you can build. So that is how I tend to see myself, as somebody who is an engineer who still likes to tinker around products. And during this process, I've had the fortunate time of getting involved in shaping new markets. As emerging technologies leader and operator at Cisco, I was involved in a bunch of I guess companies that ended up attracting new markets. Whether it was voice over internet protocol like voice over IP, video, cybersecurity, etc. So I kind of saw that as something that I could take all that experience, that knowledge, and the know-how I had built over the years, And kind of as I thought about, what how I can do all that, and maybe as help some founders get to whatever point that they are trying to get to. So that's how I saw myself as an engineer, somebody who was building products, putting products out there, and then eventually helping founders build these products. I tend to also kind of call myself a company builder, mostly because venture capital is it's a means, but it's not the end. In the end is about building a great company. So the process of that is what fascinated me the most, as to how you can go from nothing to something that could be extraordinary. And that's how I see myself over the last 6 7 years, actually 7+ years now, just working with founders, as a solo GP slash solo VC earlier, and then now in the last couple of years with some funds, including J Ventures most recently.
Fantastic. So, if you look at the J Ventures, the tagline, it says, "We move fast on decisions, we are patient with growth timelines, and hustle to help entrepreneurs reach their goals." That's very aligned with your company building philosophy, I think. So, and based on your product centric experience, as you mentioned earlier, it kind of positions you to build something new from in terms of the, this is a venture builder ecosystem. Something like that is what you're creating, I think.
Yeah. So our goal at J Ventures was always, maybe we'll talk about what is actually changing in the venture ecosystem. Capital, I guess the biggest change that has happened, at least as far as I see, when I started to, or when I tried to build a company back in 99, 2000, and I was trying to raise venture capital for that almost 20, 21 years ago, versus, in the late 2000s, and now in the early 2020s. I think the biggest change is that the access to capital has become much more broader, which means, people, founders rather, everywhere and anywhere seems to get access to capital. Now there is obviously some work to do in terms of the gender diversity, etc. But just as in general, I think access to capital has become much more broader. So how do you kind of, if you're building a product as a venture capitalist for this new decade, you not only have to be different, but you have to bring some different kind of value to these founders. And
Yeah.
that's what I think, when we, about 3 years ago, I literally met somebody who was passionate about community. Community in the sense that, as a, what is a venture capitalist? I mean, it's basically, a bunch of people who take money from, one side, which is the LPs, and then put money into founders, right? So
Right.
we are trying to, our job really is to make this process efficient, which is helping find founders the capital and helping capital find founders.
Right.
So we can be the bottleneck, or we can become the bridge. We decided that we can become the bridge instead of being the bottleneck. And so we kind of created this upside down philosophy, where we said, look, our value add to the companies that we invest in is not going to be just about the capital. There's lots of great people out there running lots of interesting funds who can put in lots and lots of capital. But where is the value add really coming from? If the founders do need it, there are many smart founders who don't typically need any help. And if they don't, God bless them. That's great. But for founders that are trying to build something and go from somewhere to from nothing to somewhere, we tend to see ourselves as where is the value add opportunity that we can bring to the table. And that is about the people. At the end of the day, this business is really connecting people, investing in people. People are building businesses. So everywhere you look, it's really all about people. Whether it's the founders, whether it's the investors, whether it's our portfolio companies trying to hire. So it's people, people, people.
Yeah.
So we kind of put that aspect first, saying, look, let's put people first. So we kind of build a community of close to about 370 investors in the fund, who are operators, many of them, venture capitalists in their previous lives and current lives. And close to half of them are actually serial founders. Why does all that exist? So that they can actually help us, the people that are running the fund or who are technically investing, go and do our jobs much better. That is the true value add that we think venture capitalists should bring to the table, and that's what we try to do as we see the next decade of investing shaping up, as like this community capital, the intellectual capital from the community. So it's not just about me, who has a certain track record, or the general partner of the fund who has a certain track record, but it's about this collective set of individuals who can actually help change the game for founders.
So great, Nilesh. I'm really excited about this whole new way of looking at startups and venture space. And based on that playbook, which you're kind of laying out, what are one or two things you think most founders you work with need help with, which you are able to consistently offer in your firm?
Yeah, I think I would say, the fact that uh, our understanding of the things that we see, I kind of tend to call it from a market perspective, and the fact that we have many people who either have done it before, either have built companies, or either who have been operating in those areas. That's the value add, or that's the perspective about the markets. Our understanding of the market, our understanding. So market is what I mean. It's people buying and selling stuff, right? Products,
Mm-hmm.
and we are fortunate to actually have people who have done that. So that is probably the biggest value add, whether it's getting the right design partners, or getting the conversation with your first set of customers,
Yeah.
making a call to somebody at for a particular NBA sports team, if you're trying to build a sports technology product and selling it to an NBA team, or an MLB franchise.
Right.
So that's where it's just connecting the dots, I guess, is how I tend to look at it, right? With the philosophy that founders do pretty much know what they need to know, otherwise you wouldn't invest in them, right? But what can we do to help them go from point A to point B, whether it's the market, whether it's the first set of customers, whether it's just connecting the dots.
Exactly. So, in I had a small stint at MIT Media Lab about year and a half, and I worked for a professor who was working with communities, just like you mentioned,
Yeah.
in communities so many times. He talked about the flipped venture model, where everything is flipped. If you think the investor is far away from the founder, in the model they were closely working. If you think you get into the startup space because you love it, in this model, it's not because you love it, because it's the need of the community. So you go and ask what the community wants, don't do what you like. So that was a flipped model. I think the model is getting flipped. What's your take on that? Like, if we talk about the future projections, future of venture landscape, like in the strong predictions wise, do you think it's getting flipped?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no question. In fact, I frankly don't remember the last time people talk about founder, or rather VCs in control. Yeah, I mean, there are cases, the WeWork case, or there are some examples out there where bad things have happened. But in general, I think the market and the ecosystem believes that the founders know what they are doing, and you should let them do what they need to do, right? Because they are the ones who are actually building companies. They are the ones who are talking to customers, and they are the ones who are finding the problems, right? So our goal, frankly, if I could, would be to get out of the way as much as we can, right? And come in the way when they need us, or when they think that, hey, can you help me connect here or connect there, or can you help me solve this problem, or can you help me address this particular issue at a board level or at a non-board level, etc. So it really, everything starts from the founders. Everything really should be driven by the founders. And frankly, I think the market also acknowledges the fact that if you have invested in the right founders, right, and if you've kind of invested in the right structure, assuming that the founders have created the right incentives and have kind of created the right structure, whether it's the company, whether it's the organization that they are trying to build, etc., then all of those issues that we used to talk about, I guess 12, 13 years ago, about certain rights, certain investor rights, certain governance, and certain control that investors need. Now there are many, I guess now, $1 billion funds, again I won't name them, who don't even take board seats, and they're putting 20, 30, 40, maybe 100 plus million checks into many of these companies, early stage and growth stage, and
Mm.
don't even have board seats. So how do just in a mental model, which you would never be able to think, just maybe 12, 13 years ago, that,
Yeah.
hey, I'm putting a $20 million check. How can I not have visibility into this company, right?
Right.
Now you're sitting back and saying, look, okay, I have visibility in the company, but what am I really be able to do? This is not a private equity type of play. Venture capital is, or rather the VC model is much more, obviously we are minority owned. There are, certain covenants that we can put in terms, etc. But I guess in general, there's not much that we should try to do or try to boil the ocean. Because again, like I said, the founders are in the driving seat. And they are in the driving seat because they are the ones who are actually running these companies. So as an investor, you have to ask yourself that, do I need to worry about this company by virtue of having me put on this board, etc., or do I need to do the right things by actually building relationship with these companies? By the way, a lot of our portfolio companies, in fact, I would say most of our portfolio companies have great relationship with us, and we don't even have board seat, nothing like that, really, just nothing. But how do you get that visibility? You get that visibility if you actually end up building trust with these founders. If they trust you, that you are always going to, I'm not saying you need to take your side just for the sake of taking their side, but you're always going to try to be on the right side, assuming that the founders are on the right side. Then that's where, just like, again, how, humans build their own relationships in private and professional lives. The same thing applies to this ecosystem as well. That if you end up building that trust with the founders, right? Eventually, you get to a point where some of these aspects you don't need to worry too much about, right? Now, again, startups are always going to be crazy. There are going to be more downs and ups, etc. But how do you ride that wave? There's definitely a change in how as investors need to ride that wave, right? You don't need to always think that I need to be in control. I think that mindset has definitely shifted, I would say, significantly, right? Because at the end of the day, like I said, founders are the one who are building these companies. They are going to take it to great heights or not.
Yeah. So this is great. Nilesh, really great insights today on this call. I wish, we could talk for forever about this. Such an exciting space, startup venture ecosystem. The whole thing is flipping, and you described it so well from your perspective. Any last takeaways for listeners, who aspiring, venture builders here, or startup founders who want to reach out to you? Any last thoughts from your end?
Um, no, I've been thinking about this myself. Especially people talk about, we have had this bull run for the last, and not just bull run in US, in many other, geographies, and people wonder what is happening. I am of the opinion that we are really going to continue to, in fact, maybe even, I guess exponentially, this ecosystem is going to become exponentially larger. I guess my only advice to people would be get involved. Don't sit on the sidelines.
Yeah.
Whether you're building a company, whether you are thinking of investing in a company, or whether you are just figuring out, how can you help a founder, etc. Get involved. This ecosystem, well, it's not even just an ecosystem. It's an ecosystem of ecosystems now. I guess the so-called universe, parallel here, is only expanding, and it's significantly large companies being built all over the place. So find yourself in this fascinating world of new companies being built, and figure out how you can get involved. Again, Vida, I'm always happy to hear from or meet anybody that wants to play a role in this ecosystem.
Fantastic. Nilesh, on that note, what's a good way for the audience to get in touch with you? What is the quickest way to get in touch with you?
So part of the reason why I don't sleep much is because of this, that I tend to put myself out there. It sounds like a joke, but it's really not. Is because I do feel that we would, some of us who are fortunate to live this, breathe this, etc. We want to put ourselves out there for founders, for investors, for people who are watching this from the sidelines, etc. So I'm pretty much available anywhere and everywhere. Whether I've had people who contact me on Twitter, on Facebook Messenger, on WhatsApp, on email, on LinkedIn. I'm accessible anywhere and everywhere you need to be.
Fantastic. So, on that note, I'm sure a lot of viewers have benefited from this amazing conversation. The possibilities are endless, like what Nilesh you just mentioned. I can't wait to have you again and discuss about more endless possibilities. I'm sure you will talk about more changes, more trends in the next podcast. But once again, really, thank you so much for this valuable 1 hour you spent here and filled with lots of insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you for taking the time as well. I appreciate it.
Absolutely wonderful.
Bye bye.